the fifth part of this series right here. I'm making this video now because I've got a brain tumor and I only have a few months left to live. I've been doing prevention presentations in area schools for almost 30 years, and all around Minnesota. Go done quite a few. And I would like to think I've probably done for 30, maybe 40,000 kids, sometime a gymnasium full of 300. But like I say, I got this brain tumor and I don't have much left to live. There is a couple other videos out there of me that were made probably just for family and so forth. But this is a picture of me and that brain tumor, and this is the reason why I'm doing it. Now, I'm going to talk about synthetic drugs, which is the final section of this here, and that's because right now synthetic drugs are made on mints, gums, chews, nasal spray, suntan lotion, lip balm, shampoo, soap. You can put, they're durable, and they'll last and put anything. Well, synthetic drugs have been around for a while. This is a product right here from 1994. These pills they were completely synthetic, nothing natural about them whatsoever. So the one key thing about synthetic drugs is they really don't expire. And why would they? You know, be like saying the paint on the wall is going to expire. Now, I'm not recommending that you go out and do synthetic drugs that have expired because, you know, you want to follow all the recommendations. But there are countries at this point in time. My wife was born and raised in Colombia, South America. And down there, as an example to this, there's EpiPens up here. They expire in about 1.5 years. And I might have put mine away. But an EpiPen, yeah, I did. Right, I had one up here, and EpiPen is for like bee stings and so forth. Epi comes from epinephrine and that. But here they're about $150, $200, $300, mean on up. But down there, in her area where she was from, they're the equivalent of about maybe $20, $25, and there isn't an expiration date on them. When I first met her, we went into a supermarket, very big, large supermarket, and on all the products, I couldn't find any expiration dates. And so obviously she knows Spanish and English, so far we found somebody. And I said, well, why don't you have expiration dates on these? And they said, well, you must be from the United States. I said, yes, I am. They said, well, we can't do that. I said, why? And I said, well, we put down the date it was created, and then you decide when it's expired because we don't know what you're going to do with it. We don't know if you're going to put it on the roof, leave it in your car, set it in the back. We're not going to guarantee something's going to last for a few weeks or whatever. And we don't really have any idea what you're going to do for it. So they put down the date it was created. Then you decide when it expired based on what you did with it. Now, the reason why we're mentioning this is because the theory in synthetic drug world is that drugs don't expire. And this is really a huge reason why synthetic drugs. On our way down, we met a drug dealer in Panama. Stayed there overnight, went to his, he's got a warehouse that's probably, you can't see it, but I'd say it's huge. I can't compare it, making a video, but it's just a very big warehouse. It's about, twice as high as a normal ceiling, and he's stacking synthetic drugs in Florida ceiling, and every day these drugs sit there, he's making money. You're like, well, how's he making money if those drugs are sitting there all like that? Well, the answer is because for the first time in history, the drugs are way ahead of the science. Drugs are way ahead of it. It used to be where, the pharmaceuticals would do all kinds of tests and stuff, and they were trying to find a drug that would help, blah, blah, blah. Well, in this case, you've got infinity. You got kids mixing, matching, and making stuff, and then so they say this is that. Now, at this point in time when we're making this video, there is a drug that's very popular in the country called fentanyl. In the future, who knows what it's going to be. But that has become just kind of a generic term for all kinds of drugs. And so you really don't know what it is. And the answer would be is because there's so many drug tests that would be a test for fentanyl. But with people, it doesn't come back as fentanyl. And so what they're saying is if, let's just say I got a drug that's called Spark. And so I approach some kids and I say, man, I got a drug that I've called Spark. And like, well, what is it? Like, I don't really know what it is. But they're like, well, then I don't want to buy it. I don't know what it is. And say, well, then if you go out of the room, you come back in and say, I got fentanyl. And they're like, well, I've heard of fentanyl. Yeah, okay, I'd be willing to try that. And so, like I say, these drugs are just about everything. Right here is my invention. And this is a drug tester is what it is. And there's a little hole on here, and there's a filter in it, and it's connected to the internet. And so every drug that's got an ID, and we know enough about it, it'll be all listed in here. So you put a little sample of it in there. See, right now, we have been so focused on testing the human being is what we've been doing. We've been testing the person. Up this point in time in history, we've been doing drug tests on everybody to find out what they're doing. And we got to get away from that. Because the future of testing drugs is not on testing the person, it's on testing the drug. That's what we're going to have to focus on. And so how can we do that? Well, we got databases of bazillion. We got so many right now. So you drop a little chemical in, and if it's in the side of a person, if it's in a body of a person, we'll still be able to test for it. Just follow me here, okay? So you drop a little substance in there, and it spins around and is connected to the internet. And so if all the substances come back as identifiable, then what do? So a kid who's buying it or someone on the internet or somebody who bought it, they say, well, I know what it does. I know what the buzz is and what the side effects are. I know what I'm going to get. You know what? That sounds really good to me. I'll give you anything you want per gram of that. I'll pay big bucks for that. But if they drop that substance in there, it spins around the filter and it comes back as unidentifiable, then somebody's just saying, now wait a minute, I don't know what the side effects are. I don't want to be a guinea pig. I don't know if I'm going to die. I don't know what the long-term effects are. And so they might say, well, I'm going to give you $5 or $10. I'm not going to give you much for that. They're going to worry about it. So right now, this device, okay, I created it. I invented it. I won't be around to get any money for it, but I did invent it because police want it, people who are pulling over wants it, probation wants it, parents want it, emergency rooms want it, doctors want it, schools want it, anybody doing a search on a kid in a school. I mean, so many people want this thing. That's why we need it, and we're going to get to it. It's just going to take some time. But the idea is there, the invention is there, and we're going to get it. And that's what we need. We got to get away from testing a person for the drugs, rather than we got to get to testing the drugs. And the other reason why is because we're dealing with infinity right now. We're dealing with infinity. We've tried to ban all kinds of substances, and then they tweak it, and the very next day they come on to something else. And there's kids who have created literally 15, 20 different drugs in a day. Okay, so I was in our school, and there was a kid that run by where I was in an office, and I heard this. So I said, whoa, wait a minute. I opened up the door and I looked around, and I know that kid's had some trouble with some drugs, and I said, stop right there. He says, no, you're going to catch a bus. I said, no, you stop right there. He says, no, I'm going to catch a bus. I said, you get back here, I'll talk to the bus. So I said, call the bus. It was one of them little buses up there that I was waiting for him anyway. So I said, what's in the backpack? He said, I got to tell you nothing. I said, no, you tell me what's in the backpack. I ain't no snitch, I ain't tell you nothing. I said, okay, listen. You got to tell me what's in that backpack. I'm going to take a look. What's in there? He said, I got to. So anyway, finally I got him to open up the backpack. And what was in there is he had all these candy tins. And I went, wait a minute. I remember for the last 6 months, these kids have been collecting candy tins, and I thought it was for some art project or something. But this is not a kid who's been working on an art project. I know the kid. I just knew that's not what he was doing. I said, so what's going on with all the candy tins? Well, I did something about a snitch. I said, okay, what? I'm about a snitch. What is it? So after we got it fessed up, there was a guy down in Panama they met him on Facebook, and he was sending he's asking these kids to send him all the candy tins and different things that he can. He was filling them all up with synthetic drugs and sending them back. Okay, and so there was maybe a couple centralized persons, but anyway, what he had inside the candy tin was then breast strips. And like, breast strips, wait a minute, breast strips, you put drugs on breast strips? And like, yeah, we did. And I thought, my mind flashed back, and I said, how did they learn how to do that? And they learned it from us. It's called Suboxone. So what Suboxone was like methadone. What happened was, in treatment centers and places, in prisons and so forth, they'd put a pill, gum it down underneath their tongue, then go, I took it, and then they'd spit it out and try and sell it. So in order to avoid that, we said, we'll just put it on a breast strip, it'll dissolve on your tongue, we don't got to worry about you spitting it out and selling it, because it's on there. Well, they learned, so then there's the drug addicts who are in these treatment centers said, wait a minute, like with the Suboxone, said, you can put drugs on that? And so then there was a person, and I'm about to tell you who it was. He had a coffee table, and he went and got all these breast strips at dollar stores and so forth, and he put them all over this coffee table. He got an O2 canister, he loaded it up. Well, he bought a whole kilo for the drug. And now back in 2008, the drug was called JW8018, which stands for John William Huffman. And he was trying to find a drug that would do what cannabinol receptors in your head cause them to snap together and bind so that you get that buzz. And he tried 001, 002, he got to 018, he found it. Right? And so all the students are there. They have published his findings because it's harder to get a patent and so forth on things, but you publish your findings and it's yours. Well, all the kids are like, wait a minute, you got a drug that will do what marijuana will do, but it won't show up in your drug test as marijuana? Hey, what is that? And so, well, here are the substances for it. You can put it all together, isomers, all the kind of things, and whatever goes in there, because they're all different now. And so that will do it. So, okay, well, if we put that on pine needles and cattails and birdseed and light that up, it's going to be gone. So we'll put that on herbal incense, because herbal incense burns slow. So they put it on herbal incense, and right away it made its way into the military commissaries. So we had a lot of military people, and they said it was not intended for human consumption. So at military commissaries around the world we had, and they called it K2. So if you ever heard of K2, that was K2. K2 was JW8018, sprayed on herbal incense because incense burns slow. Now at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, where they probably do more drug research than the rest of the world combined at this point in time in our history, so we need to credit them for a lot of things. Hebrew University has done massive in that anyway in Jerusalem. And so they were trying the same thing. HU stands for Hebrew University. They tried 001, 002, they got to 210, and they found it. And so they found it, and they published their findings to get credit for it. And right away, all them students are like, wait a minute, you got a drug that will show up, it will do what marijuana will do, but it won't show up in your drug test as marijuana, it's synthetic? Like, okay, well, now in the United States, they've been putting this stuff on incense, because incense burns slow. It says not intended for human consumption. If we put that on pine needles and cattails and bird seeds and light it up, it's gone. So let's put it on incense too, and we'll call it spice. And so they called it spice. So as far as the illegal, illicit, synthetic drug world, we're going to use a phrase here, the granddaddies, the grandmoms, grandparents, whatever you want to say. The first two that really launched this whole synthetic drug thing was these two right here. And the people who are involved in that, they know it. And they have come back years later, especially John William Huffman, and said, I wish I was never involved in that. But he was, and so there's the history of that. And we don't know if some of these substances that they're trying to ban, see, it would take 6 months of clinical trials to test something that a kid just made, because they got to find out it's got no medicinal value. And then they're going to ban it. Well, here's what I think is going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but I predict that it will. And that is a lot of these substances that we've banned so quickly because some kid made it and it was illegally made, in the future they are going to solve stuff. We might have the cure for cancer mixed in with that. We might have the cure for a whole lot of things mixed in that, but we don't know that right now because a lot of stuff has been banned because it was made by a high school kid. And so they don't want to give that any credit. They tried to ban it. So, and then at first, when they were trying to ban things up until around 2008, they didn't have any chemists that could agree with them. There's an analog law that said, well, we've banned Jadewaite 018, we've banned HU210, and so everything that's an analog of those. So everyone in the room, if I took that substance, Jadewaite 018, and I dumped it in 12 different containers, and I mixed and matched and I made all of them, what the analog law said was that all 12 are illegal. Well, I did my research. I went all over the country. I studied it. I even went out to Connecticut. I went to a lot of places, and I was looking at court cases all over for about a year and a half, from 2008 until almost 2010. And there was no prosecutions that I could find, because what the chemists were saying was no, those are not illegal substances. The chemists were all saying they got to ban that, ban that, ban that, ban that, ban that, ban that, and we were trying to do that. And so what we finally came to was we got to go after intent. So when I was a kid, or a lot of older people that are watching this presentation, when you were a kid, if you gave somebody a substance and they took it, that was on them. But now what's happening is if I give somebody a substance and something happens to them, they're coming after me. If I knew that that was a substance, a mood, mind altering thing, and I gave it to them and something happened to them, they're trying to charge me. And so you got to instill that in with these teenagers and young kids. Don't give anybody anything, because you don't know if they got a heart murmur, or you don't know what's going on with them. So you give them something and something happens to them, they're going to come after you. And so we talked about those granddaddies. The most famous person in the history of Minnesota, they say, died from a synthetic drug overdose, and for we won't waste any time, that was Prince. And so they say, well, Prince would have been an accidental overdose. If you go up and research, they say he had a U4770 lidocaine, and they tried to say he had fentanyl in there. Well, at the time, if it was real fentanyl, I mean, a doctor and a pharmacist would have been locked up pretty quick. But he did what right now a lot of kids can do. Now, this is going to get settled in the near future. I think this is going to get settled. But at this point in time when we're making this video, a 12-year-old kid can go to a store, get a cash card for however much money they want. They can go online, buy whatever they want, be whoever they want, and have it shipped wherever they want. And now, when I told you that there was a kid who put breast strips all over this table, he got an O2 canister, put the synthetic drugs in it, pumped it up to get some pressure in there with his bike pump, sprayed it all over there, loaded them up into these containers, like this stuff right here. That was a 7th grader. That was a 7th grade kid. That was a kid who just turned 13 years old. And how do I know? This is the stuff. I got the kid's stuff. I've confiscated over 400 different chemicals off of kids doing searches in schools and just getting them to fess up to stuff that they're doing and being able to say, I know that kid's on something. It might not show up on a UA, so I'm not going to go after the UA. I'm not going to go after the what's in their body. I'm going to go after the substance. We're going to test the substance. That's what we need to do. We need to get away from the person and test the substance. And so, and it could be in their body too, but the substance. So anyway, you can't see it on that camera right there, but this is a sample of one that I got. Well, when he finally caught up to that kid, he had already gotten rid of about 500 of them. He had a whole 1,000. He had 1,000 grams. He had got rid of 500 of them already. And these were some pretty potent, powerful synthetic drugs. All right. And so we've talked a lot about synthetic drugs and where it's going to go in my invention. And synthetic drugs are obviously in beverages. They really are, so you got to look out for that too. There are some in the camera angles showed some of the stash cans that people like this right here. I won't get into too many of them, but now let's talk about the media and how much they promote. Way back when, nobody was alive that watched these videos then, but back in the 1930s and so on, the tobacco companies made comic books. And so this one right here was Camel. Camel made comic books and it was in the Sunday comic section, which then would encourage. And then in the late 80s, early 90s, there was something called Joe Camel, which was a big promotion for Camel cigarettes. And then lately, even Red Bull's come out with cartoon stuff. The Fast and Furious movies, most all the first ones had NOS, nitrous oxide systems energy drink in it. Here's an image of Fast 5 right here, where he's got nitrous. I mean, this is the same exact label for a NOS energy drink, and he's shooting a harpoon into a steel girder trying to bring down a parking ramp. They had NOS machines. Then some of the movies right alongside, they're racing in a look like a desert, and on both sides there's big semi trucks lined up that have the M. For a while, Monster sponsored NASCAR. So it was the Monster Cup. The kids would see that M going around the track, and so that was the promotion. When I was a kid, I remember seeing the movie The Wizard of Oz, and I said to my mom, "That's a drug movie." And my mom looked at my dad and said, "I think there's something wrong with the kid." I said, "No, that's a drug movie. They're laying in a field of poppies seeing flying monkeys. That is a drug movie." Think about Scooby-Doo. Shaggy's the biggest pothead on TV. They're chasing ghosts and demons and eating all them Scooby snacks. Look at all the TV shows and everything that's being promoted to kids that involves a theme of drugs in it and somehow. And so parents, you need to pay attention to that. Don't count on the schools. I worked in schools for almost 30 years. For 99% of the people who work in schools, it's a job. They got their own families. They don't raise your kids. You're a parent, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a brother, you're a sister. You raise these kids. No one else does. You do. All right? That's why I do this thing, because you got to do it. The government is not going to, even if they regulate anything. How many kids did something that was regulated that told them they couldn't do? I mean, that's why most all the kids wind up at the ALC to begin with. And so for a while there, they were calling designer drugs. And what do designer drugs mean? Well, that means that I could sit and on my coffee table, I could design a drug that would be an upper, a downer, a painkiller, whatever I want. I can mix and match and make all kinds of stuff, and that's what they would call designer drugs. And so then the last thing on here, for a while there, we were using the term BOGO. And I would say to a whole room full of ALC kids, I said, "What do you think of crack? History Channel. How about meth? History Channel. How about cocaine? History Channel. How about marijuana? History." Why do you keep saying History Channel? Well, why would I spend any amount of time growing something anywhere, commit a felony, bring it across some border, violate my probation, pay $50 a gram at this point in time for cocaine, $70, $80 a gram for heroin, over $100 a gram for Molly, all these other drugs? Why would I do that when I can have what we call BOGO, fill my head with cookies and cream, bananas and cream, a nice synthetic drug? It was maybe $3, $4, $5, and that's not even my lunch money. So every generation has had some chemical that they can buy for a really low price that gets them, pretty high. And at that point in time, we were doing this big project called BOGO. It was a school safety project. We were doing it at the ALC school, and that was the whole point of it. Was that you could mix and match and make and do all kinds of stuff, and it was our job to get these kids to prevent them from doing this stuff. That the government is not going to come in. They can hire thousands of employees. They're not going to come in and stop your kids from doing anything. You got to do it, and it's not going to be the schools. Just because the schools have your kids for 6, 7, and 8 hours a day, they don't raise your kids. They don't. One teacher's got a classroom from anywhere from 18 to 30 kids. They don't raise your kids. You do. You got to tell them what's right and what's wrong, and if you got to tell them not to do this stuff, you got to take it away from them. You got to say no, because like I said, this is coming from 7th and 8th graders. All right, and so I think I've talked about a whole lot of stuff. The video is pretty much done. There's going to be a lot of questions. Let me say at the end of this, by the time you watch this video, I won't be alive anymore. And I wish you all the best. I really do. Thank you.